Hey, Savvy here with a quick word from our sponsor, Color Street by Ashley Robinson. Did you know that these are 100% real nail polish strips? And the best part, no dry time. That's right, you don't even have to wait for them to dry. Just peel, press, file, and go. It's that easy. And with so many amazing colors and designs to choose from, you know I'm obsessed. Grab yours today. Just click on the link in the description box below. The Savvy and Sage podcast is sponsored by author Summer K. Scott. Check out her series for young adults, The Chronicles of Heavenly Jordan. Books 1 and 2 are available now on Amazon and Kindle.
That some districts have gone to not having masks at all and trying to get that silver lining, because I think CDC said that schools will be still required to do masks. Yep. So it's going to be a little interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and you and I both know in public schools, about 60% of that class time is on keep your mask on, right?
Exactly. You are so correct.
Oh, I remember. I'll never forget those days.
We're talking to Dr. Angela Strozier. So I want to ask you, what was your first indication that you wanted to be in education? What basically brought you into this career field?
Basically, my first indication that I wanted to be in education was when I did an initial internship at a school when I was in college. And also, I had many opportunities to see my mom teaching in her class. So I was always in awe about the joy that I saw when her students appeared to just really, really enjoy her teaching, and was always sitting on the edge of their seats. So that truly excited me and gave me the desire to know that I too wanted to teach others. So it was like a light bulb moment for me that inspired me to want to teach and equip students for life.
That's awesome. I love that. And you're actually a principal, is that correct?
I am a school effectiveness specialist for the Georgia Department of Education, and I actually am a retired principal, so I coach 3 principals in comprehensive needs schools at this particular point. So that means that schools that are at the bottom 5% in the state of Georgia.
Gosh, that is a major responsibility. You were mentioning about being inspired by your mom. I didn't know that your mom was a teacher as well, but you went above and beyond being a teacher. I was just about to say but you're not nobody's just a teacher. Nobody.
Yeah, that's so true.
Even a parapro, you're never just a teacher. But you were inspired enough to keep on going to the leadership end of that. Mm-hmm. So, and on that same note, so what would you say was the highlight of your profession? I know there's been a lot of them, but what was, or it's hard to choose, I'm sure, but one of the more supreme and definitive moments that you remember where it's like, yeah, I made it, or I got this, or I achieved this?
Well, one of my most defining moments, I would say, in my career was more on a personal level, and it's when I signed a student up in my class for the Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Oh,
Kevin,
nice.
Yes, Kevin had sickle cell. He was a great student academically. However, he was often hospital homebound due to his illness. Mm-hmm. So his wish was to participate in the 1996 Olympics that occurred in Atlanta that year.
Wow.
So we submitted his wish to the Make-A-Wish Foundation and made his dream come true. Oh. And so, of course, the smile that he had on his face left a forever imprint in my heart. He was beaming from ear to ear, and that truly brought joy to my heart to make a difference and to impact a child's life in that manner.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah.
That's like a Good Morning America moment right there.
Mm-hmm.
Should have been on
Yes,
TV.
it
That's
was
awesome.
for me.
Yeah.
It
That's
was
good.
for me, Diana, at Good Morning America. Yes.
Oh.
So on that same note, but on the flip side, what were maybe some of the more challenging or some of the most challenging times that you ran into during your career?
Well, one of the most challenging moments in my career was when I initially received the job of being a principal.
Mm-hmm.
And unbeknownst to me, I walked into an absolute mess.
Oh.
I walked into the school's vault and I saw a stack of leave statements of the staff that was about 3 feet high,
Oh, Lord.
that was never submitted into the leave and reporting platform.
Oh.
So, based on the previous administration, the staff were not being forthright and honest about submitting their leave of absence reports.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that said, the Office of Internal Affairs became involved in this process.
Oh, Lord.
Therefore, some staff members had to pay back as much as $8,000 plus
Wow.
because they were taking time that they didn't even have.
Oh, my
Wow.
God.
So, since I was thrown into the process of having to handle that as a first-year principal,
Mm-hmm.
many of the staff often, quote-unquote, bullied me, and they tried on numerous occasions to make my tenure at my school very, very uncomfortable for me.
Mm-hmm.
They sabotaged you, essentially.
Yes, they did.
Wow. That was a challenge, a
Yes.
real challenge, because you
Yes.
came on board to do the right thing.
Right, right. And I think that just in hindsight, I just really realized that the powers to be did not realize the impact that I was feeling in my building based upon what was happening. So therefore, they should have just allowed me to transition to another building after I had to do such extensive cleanup.
Yes.
Because it really impacted me
Oh,
horribly.
yeah. Gosh. And there are challenges. I was not a principal. I never got to the leadership levels, but I was going to say I could write a book, but I did. I wrote two. But it really was from a student perspective and just the challenges from the students. Because, when you're dealing with students, and you know this and I know this, when you're dealing with students, you sometimes can learn more from them than they can learn from you on certain levels and in certain genres. But just being able to tune in to what the student needs, that was a big challenge. We could have a whole thing about that, Savanna and me and you, but the bottom line of what's really going around in my head is I never realized the challenges of the parents of the children and how that impacted the children. So there's all these different levels that you're having to manage and address. And you're thinking you're going to school to teach, just like as a principal, you think you're going to school, I suppose, to manage your crew. But, there's always a backstory to everything.
Yes. Because most people, when I share the story about what happened at the onset of me arriving, they were like, "Oh my God, I never knew that you had to deal with that." And I said, "Yeah, so now you see why they treated me the way they treated me." And they said, "Yeah, it clearly explains that." So, yeah, you never know what you walk into. That's one thing about being a leader. You just have to take it all on at that moment and make it work for you. So it's just a sad affair that happened, but at the same time, when you sit in the seat, you take what happens.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you have done it with grace, my dear.
Well, thank you.
And-
Thank you.
And another one of the big challenges that has been put forth has been the pandemic, and that was something that teachers I know everywhere were figuring out ways to deal with that as a new challenge, and as if you all needed another challenge to deal with.
Yep.
But as the pandemic, as we talk about that, what did you learn, as it pertains to improving, the educational system? I mean, what things did you come across that you hadn't dealt with before, and what things did you take away from dealing with teaching and doing all this during the pandemic?
Some of the things that I took away from this pandemic is, number one, whether it pertains to our personal life or to education, I feel that we all came to the understanding that family matters more than we realize.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
our families have served to be our medicine during this time of pandemic to help us get through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another thing I realized was that we had to embrace and befriend technology, and clearly now there's no turning back.
No,
Mhm.
not at all.
Of course, the world has long been digital, as we well know. Many of the older people, as well as myself, we were going to the grocery store picking up our groceries, but we all of a sudden had Instacart and all these other little strategies to support us regarding technology. So for schools, of course, they had to pivot, and we were no longer brick and mortar. And as a result of that, we have now learned that we have many virtual opportunities that will be afforded to students that we did not even think existed prior to the pandemic. So on that note, it's a positive from that perspective, because again, many of the teachers that I observed throughout the pandemic, they helped us to see what is possible during the virtual learning environment. And we would not have realized it if we did not have the pandemic.
Yeah,
That's an important point. I wouldn't have thought of that, but I guess it's sort of like, what is that quote? The mother of ingenuity, I guess.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
so people had to be a lot more. Well, first of all, it was immediate. You had to completely change over what you were doing before, because all of a sudden, one day they're in the classroom, next day they're out, and then everybody had to come up with these different styles of teaching, regardless of what their technical ability was.
Exactly.
That's good though. Yeah, that is good, because you're right. The world is moving more and more to just IT devices for learning all levels. Yeah.
Yes. And so as a result of that, we also realized something that was very huge, which is the digital divide. Communities and school districts have learned to adapt, but we have got to figure out how to make the playing field more level
Yes.
for all of our students and families across the nation.
Yes.
So therefore, we have realized that there's a huge technology gap. And so we have, as I said, got to figure out, and it's more obvious to us now, that we have to make learning more equitable than we have in years past.
Exactly. And that in itself could be an hour-long show, just that. Yeah.
absolutely. And we have also had a previous episode on education where we did talk about the disparities of kids that not only cannot afford, Wi-Fi and laptops or, some of the more technical things, but also to the fact that they live in such rural areas that even if they could afford Wi-Fi, it's not even offered to them. And
Absolutely.
so that's a huge, like these basically Wi-Fi deserts, much like you have a food desert or, any other thing. So that's a major issue that, thank goodness, the pandemic has actually shed light on some of these things for us to realize that we need to, implement and deal with some of these issues.
Yes. Another issue that I thought about that came out of the pandemic was that we're going to need more mental health and wraparound services
amen.
within schools to address, because many of the issues that our children are now facing, they will certainly outlast the pandemic itself.
Oh,
So
yes.
there will be a need for us arranging guidance, counseling, check-ins, and things of that sort, and making sure that teachers are actually trained to deal with trauma, grief, and that self-care piece, so that our students will be able to flourish in classrooms as well.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah. That they've actually been discussing those on those issues. It's almost like talking about that used to be untouchable, because people just wanted to hear all the sugar-coated stuff. But now these morning talk shows, which I usually watch with my second cup of coffee, just to get the news for the day. But the shows like the Today Show with Hoda Kotb and Savanna Guthrie, she's done. She has addressed those issues with a lot of the high school students and middle school students. So you're right on target. You are there in, face to face with these issues. So yeah, that's absolutely something that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed now.
Yes, yes. Right there.
All right. So lastly, we're going to ask what are three things that you would want to say, to parents to encourage them about the future of education for their children. I know there's always that like prime piece of advice, that you would give. So what are maybe three things that you would say to parents about the future of their children's education?
First, I would say to a parent to encourage them about the future. I would say start with what your child knows and use that as an opportunity to dispel any myths about the pandemic or about the amount of learning loss that may have occurred during this pandemic, because it is common for children and even adults to hear inaccurate information. So celebrate the small wins and embrace each day, and let it be a source to your child that no matter how bleak life may seem, remember the phrase, "This too shall pass." The pandemic is not permanent, and we will get through this.
Right.
Secondly, I will tell them to build memories. These are historic times, so families are living through a time period unlike what we've ever experienced. So it can be meaningful and emotionally validating to record any experiences that you have at this time. It's an opportunity to reframe the experiences your child may be having from a perspective of perhaps creating a time capsule.
Yeah,
And so
that's a
when
great
this-
idea.
Yes, and so when this moment in history ends and life gets back to normal, the memories created can serve as a reminder of the personal resilience, the strength that can be fostered for a lifetime. And then you can create in your child a can-do spirit that he or she can carry with him when they face tough times in life.
Absolutely.
And lastly, I would encourage the parents to have their child to connect socially with peers, extended family members. Continue to be creative using apps such as the Zoom, Skype, Instagram, and etc. Using the telephone or texting conversations are great starts. But keep in mind that we must continue to have our children as well as us as adults to transition back gradually, because this will help them to diminish that anxiety that they may be having. So in light of that, you can create these moments to help your children know that they will win no matter what they are facing. And it is very imperative to be affirmative during this time and to be your child's personal cheerleader.
I love that. That's awesome.
I love that too. Parents need cheerleaders too.
There you go. Exactly.
We all need cheerleaders.
Exactly. We need it. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I loved your answers.
Yes, thank you so much. That's all we needed for the interview. I appreciate that. You gave some great answers. Very well thought out.